Hello. Hello, hi, hello. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for putting up with my... You can tell that I've been doing this for a long time because no one in chat was like, what the hell is that thing? Everybody's like, it's Colville and his synth nonsense. Hello, hi. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. This is the device you were just listening to. Getting ready to... This, I think, is going to be the star of my next video. I'll try to get it recorded this week. Try to go out to the park and film, put it in nature, and then shoot it and do a little something special, and we'll see what happens. We should probably put some yeah, why not? Because we don't care about monetization, do we? No. If we did, I would turn Super Chat back on, but I didn't. I don't have Super Chat on because people got frisky when they would spend money on a Super Chat question and I would not answer it. And I felt bad, and I thought this is not the best way to do things. So I turned Super Chat off. So that's evidence that we don't really care about modulation, or about modulation. We care a lot about modulation. Oh, hey, you guys don't need to... Hang on a minute. There we go. Hello. Hi. Well, yeah, Jason96, Super Chats are overrated. I liked the Super Chat thing in principle because... why is it so warm in here? Did I not turn on the AC? Nope. There we go. Hello. There we go. I'm a little less blown out. I like the Super Chat thing in principle because I like the fact that like it was a self-selecting way to just put questions at the top, and I go, I'll just answer these. But then, of course, some people ask questions I don't want to answer, or don't know the answer to, or think it would be a counterproductive to address, and that's when I always try to make sure I was mixing in questions from regular chat too. And that seemed to work well. That nobody seemed to have a problem with any of that. It was only once people were spending money that they thought instead of thinking I'm going to throw Matt some money just to say I appreciate what he's doing and I'll ask a question. No, they thought that the money bought them an answer, and it's like, no, that's not how this works. That is not how this works. So let's see what happens if we just shuffle the jams playlist. What will we get? Do we wonder? Let's turn the volume down so you guys don't get your ear holes blown out. Yeah, that'll do. What's up, Demetrius Christou? Jessica Van Voorhis. Oh, glad you like the null. Oh, awesome. A squad unto myself. Yeah. And of course, I think there's lots of ways to interpret that power, but I always interpret it as this burst of speed as the null runs around the battlefield, just punching people. We tried to give the null some of that speedster flavor. And I think we did a pretty good job. Jordy was the main designer on it, and took a lot of iteration, but we got there. And we always wondered for Draw Steel. I mean, I wondered, could we make like a real speedster character? In fact, one of the things where in the very, very, very first discussions we had about Draw Steel when we flew everybody out, this was before the I think it was, I don't remember now if it was before the OGL debacle or right during the OGL debacle. There's a timeline. I could go look it up. I'm not gonna. Well, we talked about the idea of using instead of using initiative of any kind, using a speed chart, and I definitely think that there are future MCDM games that might use a speed chart, where there's like a certain number of phases. It's usually 10 or 12 because 10 is a nice round number people understand, but 12 gives you many different ways to divide. And so let's imagine there's 12 segments in a turn, and if you have speed 1, you act on segment 6, and that's it. You are very slow. You are a tortoise, right? If you have speed 2, you act on segments 4 and 8. If you have speed 3, you act on segments 3, 6, and 9. If you have speed 4, you act on what is that? 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? And that would work. I mean, you could make an argument. I mean, I know it would work. I've played games that work that way. You absolutely could work that way. But we I think we talked about that for maybe 20 minutes. Demetrius Christou, is there any information about the new classes like the Summoner outside of the Patreon? Outside the Patreon, un minimis. You just rumors and like, you know, like the fingerprints of a mouse on a wet pipe. But if you want the straight dope, you got to go to the Patreon or just do nothing. That's the thing, is when it's incredibly rare that people complain about this. It's incredibly rare, but people do every once in a while complain about how, oh, this is paywalled behind the Patreon. And I'm like, well, if you don't like it, just do nothing, and that problem will solve itself. Because all the Patreon classes and stuff, all the stuff that we send them, the adventures that they test, ancestries. I don't think we've sent them the ancestries yet. We're working on, I think, 8 ancestries now, seven ancestries for the crowdfunder in December. Just do nothing, and all that Patreon content will eventually be released once it's done, once it's ready. If only the patrons have it, that means it's not done yet. That means it is still in development. Troubadour, yeah, people love the Troubadour. That makes me really happy. In fact, I was running Draw Steel yesterday morning for a YouTube neighbor of mine and their friends, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm still learning. This is the first time I've started using the codex as a director, and it is incredibly powerful. But I've realized I may have made a mistake running for these folks, none of whom know Draw Steel. I mean, they read the rules, and they were actually pretty well educated on how things worked by the time we started, but this was the first time they'd ever played. So of the 5 people at the table, only I really knew Draw Steel and could answer questions. And then none of us knew anything about the codex. So that was kind of compounding ignorance upon ignorance. And then I decided to start with the Fall of Blackbottom, because I know Draw Steel. I don't need a tutorialization, damn it. The Delian Tomb, come on. The Delian Tomb, that was 10 years ago for me. No, Fall of Blackbottom. It's a hot start. You start in an inn, and you wake up in the morning, and the inn explodes. And although I think it's the Dice Society has a starter adventure for Draw Steel called You Meet in an Ambush. I haven't looked at it because I try to stay away from, I'm not interested in the contents of third-party Draw Steel stuff. I'm very interested in it, but I don't want to look at it because I don't want to end up seeing something in there that go, oh, and now I want to use it and I can't. I'm like, that belongs to them, and leave it there. So best just to leave it in the black box. But I'm interested in seeing other people talk about that third-party content. I'm interested in seeing, in fact, I saw on the subreddit like yesterday, somebody said, here's my review of this third-party thing. And I'm like, that is what we need more of. We need more people who act as tastemakers in the community, talking about which third-party products are the best. But I get the impression that You Meet in an Ambush is pretty good, well received, I should say. But I wasn't running You Meet in an Ambush. I was running the Fall of Blackbottom, and if you saw it, I could show it to you. You'd be like, oh my god, like it's 3 levels of the inn stacked one on top of another, and after the iron ball smashes into the inn, the whole thing is on the cusp of collapsing. No spoilers, but the codex makes that really powerful and cool. But it's just a lot. It's so much. When I'm just getting started, I've never been a director of the codex before. But the reason I bring it up is because we have a troubadour in the party, Vale, played by Pete, and is a demon. He's a devil troubadour, and he's doing a great job. They're great role players, and it's super fun to role play with them. And watching this playwright troubadour trying to rescue people in the inn and using he did a great thing. He did an amazing thing when the inn is on fire and it's collapsing. It's experiencing catastrophic structural failure, and the heroes are just desperately, they're fighting demons because there's something around here is generating demons, and the demons are going after the people. And this is Draw Steel. It's about heroism. You got to put the heroes between the monsters and the people. We almost called the game. One on the short list of names was Against All Tyrants, or Until the Last Villain Dies. Draw Steel's punchier, and he. So there's a woman crying for help, and she's like, my wife is pinned under the debris, and it's on fire. And the troubadour sees this. I love this. This is so Draw Steel. No other game. sees this and uses, I think it was blocking, which allows him to rearrange the characters in an encounter, right? Well, normally that's to move heroes around or move bad guys around in such a way to create tactical advantage. But in this case, he's using it to save these people. And it's supposed to be like a might test to pull the debris off the trapped elf woman. But he's not a might-based character. He's a troubadour. So he uses blocking, and what he says like the camera pushes. The player does this. The camera pushes in on the trapped woman, and she's like, I don't, how, help me, how am I gonna? And the camera pulls out, and she's standing outside the trapped room with the devil, and delivering dialogue about how I have no idea how I escaped from that. I thought it was so good. It reminded me of that, is it the first episode of Futurama where where Bender's arms fall off, and it's just a close-up of one arm grabbing the arm off the ground and attaching it to his shoulder, and then that attached arm grabbing the arm that had been doing the grabbing and sticking it back on the other shoulder. And Fry says, as long as I live, I'll never figure out how you did that. That was so good. That was really nice. So, yes. Excuse me. What are we talking about? I just talked for a long time without looking at chat. So now let us see how things are going. Hope you folks like the video. Bax Writes Fantasy says the codex is amazing. I've been playing in 6 sessions with it already, and even though it's in the beta phase, it's very cool. Yeah, I would say it's pre-alpha. I would say the alpha, it will go to the patrons, and we're hoping to get the alpha of the codex to the patrons soon. I don't want to get any more specific than that. I mean, all games have those people. P-Squirrel. It's just you might not know about it. Oh, look at that! Rise Heroes Rise. Rise Heroes Rise, who is one of the first Draw Steel makers, does lots of live streams, lots of great live play videos, lots of great shorts. They do lots of shorts clipping the fun moments from their adventures. Rise Heroes Rise says, I can attest that you meet in an ambush adventure. Very fun. Awesome. So I hope you folks got a chance. This doesn't have to be, by the way, we don't have to do anything here in this stream if you folks don't want to. We could do any number. You folks already indulged me in my modular nonsense. We could go to space. I got all the space accouters. I'm well accoutered for going to space if you folks felt like it, which would be weird. But, is it Ole? Ole Ingvar Sten? I think it's Ole. I don't think you pronounce the E. Maybe you do. I don't know. That sounds like a Scandinavian name. Or like a Swedelander name. Watched the video and found it great. That makes me really happy. We'll see. It's going to be a while, I think, before we see, because the video is getting a lot of applause, right? It's getting a lot of people are watching the video and going, wow, what a great video. That makes me really happy. I worked really hard on that video, and by the time you see the video, I have done a couple drafts of it, and then I read a draft of it on Twitch, and it was like 33 pages long. And then I read it on Twitch, and then I watched the stream back, and I watched how chat was reacting to it. And I'm like, oh, they're getting distracted by the stories. Let me cut all those. So I cut like 10 pages, 12, 11 pages out of the script. And then it was an hour long, right? But it's good. So it's cool to see people are enjoying watching it, but it remains to be seen whether or not it does anything. And that's the reason I did it, because there are people, there's advice in that video for people at all stages of on the journey, including people who basically already are doing what MCDM is doing, or what I'm doing as a YouTuber. And that's the place where I was hoping to see, and I am still hoping to see, I am hoping to see change there, because there's a lot of actors in this space that their behavior I find really baffling. And I don't mean as in offensive or anything like that. I mean, like, I don't think this person knows how unproductive their behavior is. And I mean that in like a sympathetic way. Like, I've been through the ringer on all of this stuff, and I feel bad watching other people go through this. And I felt like the best way to try to, lift all boats was to make a video saying, look, here's what we have learned. Some of this might be useful to some people, but I am incredibly confident, this is, maybe somewhat unearned, but incredibly confident that someone out there is going to see that and go, oh, why am I doing this? And they'll make a change, and their community and content and things will get better. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Dev Mason says they're down for space. Okay, I'm back from watching the Futurama clip now. Like, the CR is like, I have no idea what he's talking about. to www.futurama Bender Arms Clip. Oh, there we go. Now I get it. Ole pronounces the E. Some Americans do not, and I love that. Scandinavian name. I knew it. You folks can. I've known many good friends of mine have been from that area up by the cold place. Oh, good. Keegan Brittain. I try to avoid. I mean, it'll bubble up. It'll bubble up. I find this stuff eventually, but I try not to hyper focus on the response to our video outside of our spaces. I said this on Belusky, but I got the impression that people are. I probably could have. None of these, no video I've ever made do I feel like that's it. It couldn't possibly be better. Every time I make a video, I go and I watch how people react to it, and I go, oh, okay, now that I've seen that, and hopefully every video benefits from that, but I can't go back and edit old videos, and probably nor would I if I could. The thing is the thing, let it be the thing, and then move on to the next thing. But I wrote this, something I didn't bring up in the video. When Draw Steel was announced, hang on, that's not it. That doesn't have, that's an important point, but one of the mistakes I'm seeing a lot of people making in the reaction of the video is confusing the community with the Discord. The community is the community. The Draw Steel community is already pretty big, and it's spread out all over the place, and it exists in lots of different places, including you and your friends. If you and your friends are playing and you're enjoying it and you like it, then you're in the community. It might be that doesn't mean you're in the Discord. That doesn't necessarily mean I was in the D&D community in 1985, and I did have, actually, I tell a lie. I did have the internet. A very primitive version of it. But I'm not sure that counts. I wasn't playing D&D on it, but yeah, we were networked. You knew people who knew people. It is a big network. Like, you heard about Draw Steel somewhere. You're in the network. And maybe if I had said the network instead of the community, that would have made it more clear, because community sounds like a pool of people in a space, but we understand notionally that networks are these weird, spread out, fractal structures. But you're in the network. If you're playing the game, you're in the network. You don't have to be in the Discord. You don't have to be on the subreddit. You don't have to be in the stream. In order to be in the community, you just have to be somebody who is able to moderate their behavior and who likes what we're doing. Excuse me. What's up, Dave Skurlock? Oh, the Blacksmiths Guild. Hey, look at that, Tabletop Nonsense Verse. That makes me really happy. The video triggered some meaningful discussions for us at the Blacksmiths Guild. I don't know. I get the impression you folks know what you're doing. I'm not looking really closely at what you guys are doing. If you're doing all that work, isn't the Blacksmith Guild the one that's actually a print zine? Maybe I'm mistaking one thing for another, but that means you got to be charging for it. But yeah, do I think I'll do more commentary movie watches on Twitch? Says Garf. Yeah, we just wrapped up Blade Runner. We just watched. It was 3 streams, like 30-minute stream, a 40-minute stream, and then we watched the rest of Blade Runner last night with my commentary throughout. No idea how useful or insightful it would be for people, but I stream on Twitch whenever I feel like it, which is usually once or twice a week, and not that many people show up, which is the reason I do it there. Because when I stream here, it tends to be a lot of people show up, and that freaks me out a little bit. It gets to be difficult to manage chat, but actually right now chat's doing very well behaved. N. Kaketis says, can I, as a patron, get access to the codex or not yet? Not yet, but before anybody else, yes. So we're hoping really soon, from my point of view, because we've been working on the codex for over a year. So I feel like really soon, maybe, like this year, I feel like they're targeting this year and even sooner than that for getting a version of the codex to the patrons, and that'll be step 1. And it's still gonna be really rough. There's still gonna be a lot of UX work that has not yet begun, but basic functionality should be in and working. And they will have. We shifted the focus of development on the codex a little over, probably about 6 weeks ago. Maybe more recently than that. We shifted focus on the codex development from the whole game of Draw Steel, which was one of those problem sets that's pretty expansive. But they were making a lot of progress to just getting the Delian Tomb in and working and playable. But the whole thing from soup to nuts, the whole thing, the Delian Tomb, the pre-gens, everything you get that in the Patreon, get that in the codex, and then give that to the patrons, and then we'll be on the way. And I think that's a really good strategy, and it's totally going to pay off, because the Delian Tomb is it's like a vertical slice, right? It has almost everything that Draw Steel has in it in one sense or another. You've got the characters, you've got hero tokens, you've got everything, monsters, encounters. There's negotiations and montage tests in there. You got the whole thing, but it's a very very focused chunk of content, as opposed to everything. And that's but then this is how we get to everything. Rocks Fall, Everybody Dice was a bad community member. Well, who's to say? And video was helpful for you personally. Overly defensive. Here we go. Yeah, overly defensive of TTRPGs you like. Well, I didn't say this. Rock Falls, Everybody Dies. Great name. I didn't say this, but I think I didn't need to. Hopefully, I didn't need to say this. But when you seek that validation, when you go out of your own community, because you have people that you talk to games about and play games with, presumably these are social games. When you go outside your community and you go seek out these people who are talking shit about the games you love, you are feeding an algorithm that does not work for you, that is not in your employ, that does not do anything beneficial to you. And not all, but some, and maybe even many of the people making this gossipy content online, they know that. They thrive on that. They need folks to get defensive about the things they say and come show up in their community going, "Ah, rah, 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 rah," because that feeds the algorithm. And some of these people know that and do it on purpose. Some of these people don't know it, but are doing it anyway because they're not conscious of the feedback loop. And I think some people don't even realize what they're doing when they do that. I'm talking about the content creators, the actual people making the videos. But you don't need to play that game. You already have the product you like and love. You don't need to go. I had already listened to, I guess it would have been like Hold Your Fire or Presto. I didn't need Rolling Stone to pat me on the head and tell me what a good boy I am. But I felt like I needed that. But it turned out then I just grew up. And I'm like, what am I doing? So far, my weekend's doing great. Gwillem Dawson Stanley. I hope yours is going well. We streamed Blade Runner yesterday. We're doing this today. I'm going to go, I'm just about ready, to go record my first modular video for the YouTube channel, which is literally just going to be like a music video. Basically, it's going to be my rack out in nature and some cool nature footage and some cool little special effects. And just, 7-minute long, 3.5, 4, 5. I don't know how much, I don't know what the right amount of time. There's certain YouTubers that I look to, as inspiration, and for something like this, I think something short, like 5.5 minutes, 5.5 minutes of that modular nonsense, and then I can upload like a 20-minute version to my SoundCloud, for instance, and that'll be a nice break. And then after that, probably the Draw Steel Ancestries video. And then I've got a bunch of ideas. I want to do a video showing off all the different community creations for Draw Steel. I want to do a video talking about my style of dungeon mastering, my style of being a DM or being a director, because there's always been, ever since I started my channel and people started watching, people have drawn conclusions about what I'm like as a director that I often find to be completely out of context. And it's always weird seeing people talk about what I am like as a DM. But I also think that just talking about what my style of DMing is, I think could open a discussion with lots of people in lots of places. Because right now, I think people use a lot of unproductive, I don't mean anti-productive, but unproductive language when it comes to what style of DM somebody is. Because I think the prevalence of streamers and people doing live plays, even if some of those live plays are recorded ahead of time, I still think live play is probably the right term for it. People have started to coalesce DMing styles around personalities, and I don't think that's useful. I don't think it's useful. I don't think it gets us anywhere. All right, I think we need a better or different language for talking about what kind of director are you, and we'll see if that video gets anywhere near that. I also want to make a video about how to make a class in Draw Steel, because it's actually really easy and fun to get started making something like a class. But I think a lot of people in the Draw Steel creator community make the mistake of thinking that if they want to make a class, they need to come to the community with a finished thing. Here's 10 levels. I'm like, no, what are you doing? You're already struck out. That's not going to work. And that's not how we did it. That's not how we did it. And things seem to be going pretty well over here. So let me tell you how we did it. Let me tell you how we made these classes. And I don't mean soup to nuts, beginning to end. I mean how we got started, how you make a prototype, because the prototype is the thing that you're going to build your empire on in one sense or another, right? And the prototype just needs a trigger, a signature action, a 3-cost heroic ability, a 5-cost heroic ability, and probably a feature, a class feature that's like always on or whatever. That's only 5 things. You only need 5 things to get started making class or draw steel, but that's a character. Right now you give it an ancestry and a background and a kit, and that's a character you can play. And you play it and you test it, and that's what you test and iterate on. And then you start then you have, okay, here's version 2, and it's exactly that, except there's some choices to make. There's a couple of choices to make. And then you test that, and then round 3. Now here's some subclasses. We still haven't even gotten to second level. We haven't gotten to second level yet. And we're doing a lot of testing and design, and it's a lot of fun. It's really easy. There you go. That was the video. Ta-da! Oh, that's amazing, Endersea. James mentioned a fan-made Death Knight class, and their heroic resources, Torment. Oh my God. That's amazing. That's amazing. That person gets a gold star. That person gets it. Sentinel Soul. Any chance we'll get a revival of the interview with the DM series? No. I enjoyed doing that. And it's just, I felt like, I hate to say this because it was content that I enjoyed making and that people seemed to like, but it seemed like there were better things I could be doing in my time. And that's sort of why, even though I like doing things like I interviewed Dr. Jackson Crawford, I've interviewed Matt Baum, I interviewed Quinns, which was great, and I'll probably do that again, I think, fingers crossed. I enjoy doing that stuff, and there's an alternate universe where 20-something Matt, who watched every episode of the Charlie Rose Show and has not seen another interviewer come anywhere close to being as insightful or bold as that dude was. I would love to do more interview stuff, but there's a couple of things. One is a lot of when I go on YouTube these days, there is an awful lot of content of people just interviewing each other. And I feel like that's a gravity well you get sucked in that you can't get out of, right? And just because it's a really cheap way to make content, right? Get somebody interesting in your live stream, interview them, and call it content. But also, I've got Draw Steel. I've got my 3rd novel is probably going to be done this year. Fingers crossed. Huge breakthrough this week. I'm on vacation trying to get the 3rd book finished. I don't think it'll get finished in the next week, but I'm 93% sure the outline will be done, and the first third of the book is written, and big chunks of the other 2/3 are written. But getting the outline done, that's going to be the roller coaster, the peak of the roller coaster. That's the kind of stuff I want to be working on. So I enjoy doing that, but I don't think there's going to be much more of those. But the thing is, other people could do that. Well, will you see more of the chain or more live plays from us? I think probably, but I just don't know when. Well, yeah, see, Mike, I think if personality style is the dominant conversation, RE, different styles of dungeon master or director talking about, or game master, talking about the style of communicator, game designer, story design. Yeah, I think that, but that's actually, I think that, like, yeah, because my style has a lot more to do with the nature of the world and the relationship of the players and characters to it. And I think that's a useful lens through which to look at things. I'm not really one of those directors that cares a whole lot about your character or their backstory. That's your job. That's your department. It's your job to enjoy playing your character, not mine. It would be very weird for me to care about that, right? I don't get to play your character. You play your character, right? It's my job to run the world. And in fact, there was a really, when you read The Elusive Shift, which again, you sort of have to read. You sort of have to read it. It's so good. And it's going to change how you think and the things you say about games, RPGs specifically, I mean. There's a point in the late 70s, I think it was, where somebody writes in one of these fanzines that they didn't think that the dungeon master or director or game, I don't even think dungeon master existed as a term yet. They didn't think that the director was doing anything fundamentally different from what the players were doing. I felt like this might even have impacted the development of Draw Steel when in my commitment to making it fun for the director. Excuse me, this guy says, I don't think the director is doing anything fundamentally different from the other players, except instead of playing a character, they are playing the world. And I was like, I think that's me. I think that's how I do it. Like, it's my job to set up the world, and I don't mean lore. I don't mean lore and backstory. No. I mean tension, drama. What is let's talk about the adventure. It's my job to set up the adventure, right? It's my job to set up what is going on in this place and time where heroes are suddenly called for, and it's your job to figure out how to interact with that and interface with it, and have things like ambition and stuff like that. And that's just my style. That's not the right or wrong way to do it. There are other directors who they make it all about the player characters and coming and take, okay, you need to come up with a backstory, and I'm going to take your backstory, I'm going to weave it into my narrative in such a way that all of the tensions that you develop between you and your estranged mother are going to play out and resolve satisfyingly. That's not me. Not only is that not me as a director, that's not me as a player. I don't want. I'm super glad those games exist, because it would be really boring if the hobby were that narrow. But that's my style as a director. I'm in charge of the drama. I'm in charge of the tension and the setup and the adventure. You're in charge of your character, and the game is what happens when those two things meet, right? And the fact that neither one of us, including me, who is ostensibly the author of the adventure, neither one of us have any idea really what's going to happen, right? And if I did know what was going to happen, then I wouldn't need you folks. I would just go write a novel, and I do that. And so I actually do write recreationally. I don't need to get out my narrative ambitions in my D&D games, and that's always been true. I've always been a writer while I was a DM, and I would say there was definitely a period where, especially when I was running like Champions in my early 20s, where I was trying I was abusing my friends and roping them into my narrative ambitions at the table, right? And we always got bad outcomes. Excuse me. Are the things you can do as a player to help set up the director in a scene for Draw Steel that's different from other games? No, I don't know why there should be. Everything feels nebulous until negotiation or combat. What do you mean by nebulous? Is Draw Steel the first RPG you've played? That does sort of sound like... No, correct. Well done, Little Billy's movies. Well done. Thank you. I love any reference to Topsy Turvy, even if it's a reference to me referencing Topsy Turvy, but I don't think that was. It was too specific. Any reference to Topsy Turvy is makes today a gold star day. Zachary Wade, what do you think is the most significant lesson you've learned from running tables that had bad outcomes? 100%. One of the most useful lessons, maybe the number one most useful lesson I have ever learned as a dungeon master, game master, whatever, is that it's not up to me to tell the players how to have fun. No, I've got 5 players. I've got 6 players. I have 6 different people who are going to have fun in different ways, and that's fine. And I had this idea, it was a very zeitgeisty idea. This came out of how much time I was spending in online communities. This is a super fucking important point, folks. In the 80s, in the late 80s and the early 90s, how much time I was spending in online communities. And I had this vision for what role-playing could be like based on that and based on my own interests and proclivities. And I had these grandiose ambitions regarding being in character and what what being a player meant and what participating in the game meant. And it just didn't have anything to do with anything anybody was interested in at my table, right? And that moment of realization, I don't know if it was a moment exactly, if it was just a series of lessons learned over time, I think is probably closer to the truth, of like, let people have fun their way. Like, it's my job to find my own fun in how I run. It's not my job to find fun in my players playing in a satisfactory way. Well, it's not up to me to decide whether they're doing it right or wrong. Are they having fun? Are all 5 of these people having fun? Then it doesn't matter that they're all playing in different ways, or that none of them are playing the way I wanted them to play. You're not doing it right. There's so much. And as soon as I realized that, I started to see it everywhere online in all of these discussions. My players aren't doing it right. I'm like, no. Are they having fun? Then they're doing it right. And that lesson, like, one of my friends that we played with for many years, who was perfectly happy to just show up and roll dice and kill orcs or whatever, and he never really got into character, never role played, freaked out if I asked him a question that was a narrative in character question, didn't know how to react, but was having a great time, was having fun. And that's where I coined the term audience member. The fact, and this came out of a teacher I had in college who had a huge influence on me, my Western civilization teacher. I asked him what he thought about Western civilization. He said he thought it would be a good idea. And he said, when we were talking about like, teaching in general and class sizes specifically, and he says class sizes don't matter, and we're like, what? He goes, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what the class size is. He goes, I've been teaching for 30 years. I know dozens of teachers. They all say the same thing. It's perfectly obvious when you're on this side of the power dynamic that every class I've ever taught had somewhere around 3 to 5 students, and then everybody else is in the audience. And I suddenly, I'm what am I, 20 at that point, and I look back at my life, right? My life, I have very few memories before I was in school. I realized, oh yeah, that's true of every class I've ever taken. There's a small little knot of students who are paying attention, and then everyone else is just watching the show, and they might be really good students. You can just do the homework, right? You don't have to be an active participant and engaged in what the teacher is saying in order to ace a test 100%. But that was his, and I was like, oh, and I'm synthesizing all this stuff. I was like, so it must be okay. That must be okay. That was the teacher's point. The teacher's point was you can't tell necessarily who the students are just from test scores, right? Because there are people who show up who already know all this shit, and they're going to ace every test. But you can tell when you're teaching that there are certain students who are engaged, they're watching, they're thinking about what you're saying, and they have novel reactions that you respond to, and that's the class, right? And everyone else is just watching this happen. And I thought to my friends who were perfectly capable of showing up every week, and they had a lot of fun, and they looked forward to the next week, but they weren't performative. And I thought, well, that must be okay. That was the lesson, is don't try to force your players to play the way you think is right. Let them. In fact, one of my first bosses in my career said about the employees at the company, he said, everybody's here for a different reason. And he was giving me advice because he said, Matt, it is your destiny to run your own company. And that was his way of saying, I'm getting a little sick of the backseat driving. Getting a little sick of the backseat driving, Matt. Maybe leave the nest and go do it on your own, and then come back and we'll have lots of different discussions once you've had to make these decisions. So, but I didn't take it that way. I took it as, really? And he said, Matt, everybody's here for a different reason, and it's your job to understand what those reasons are. Because if you treat this employee who's here for one reason the same as this employee who's here for another reason, you're going to get bad outcomes. And I was like, light bulbs are going off all the time. So these things, students, like it's at the end of the day, all we're talking about is the dynamics of groups. And it doesn't really matter if it's you and your friends at a gaming table, you and other students in a classroom, you and other coworkers at a company. All of these lessons all apply. They're all true. These things are wildly different in most ways, but there are absolutely lessons you can learn from and apply to all of them. And I think that's the more important lesson. What do the players want, and how can I give it to them, and how different players are like. I have friends of mine in my Wednesday night game who, I have one friend who is really interested in the tactical combat, and they're really interested in the politics of the world, but they are not interested in role playing at all. They're not interested in getting into character, right? Maybe that's a better way of putting it. They're interested in role playing in the sense of deciding what my character is going to do 100%. And then there are other players at the table who really like the improv and being in character, and both me as a player and me as a director, I have to try to service both of these folks, and I have fun doing that. But you got to make sure you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. Everybody needs what we used to call the prompt, because we were all computer science nerds in the 80s, and we taught that the dungeon master talking to you means that you have the prompt and you can type instructions. And then you hit enter, and then you have to wait. You're on a timeshare. You have to wait for the prompt to come back around, and knowing how to dispense your time as a director, as a dungeon master, and distribute your time among the players is one of the critical lessons you're ever going to learn. And that you might have players that you enjoy kind of riffing off of and role playing with more than others, but if you follow that to its logical conclusion, then you can just kick the other players out of the group, and you don't want to do that, right? You got to make sure that even though you really vibe with this person in the way that they play, everybody else gets the prompt. And they don't all need the same amount. It doesn't have to be 25, 20, or 20, 20, 20, 20. Nope. Some players, they only want about they only need the prompt 5% of the time. And if you give them the prompt more than that, they don't know what to ask. They sit there staring at the and they're like, I don't know what to type, right? And you need to pick up on that. One of the things that, one of the best, most useful, and most baffling pieces of advice I give when it comes to running the game is you need to listen to what your players aren't saying. You need to learn how to read people. You need to learn how to read people and understand that that different people express themselves different ways, and you're going to learn over time. And I've known people who I thought were pretty good dungeon masters, but they couldn't learn that. They had no idea really who these people were, even though they thought of them as friends and hung out with them every week for 20 years. They fundamentally did not understand who any of the people at the table were. They didn't understand what motivated them or what they liked or why, because they had never paid attention. They had never paid attention. Oh, I'm glad you said that, Drew Enders. Discussion of the Speedster. Yeah, I didn't bring this. I got derailed somewhat uncharacteristically. I got derailed, but I wondered whether or not, this is before we had the design of the null locked down, but I wondered whether implies or not. It's redundant. I wondered whether we could implement a Speedster class in Draw Steel by just giving them a lot of triggers. And they don't have any signature action. Their signature action is a trigger. Their heroic actions are triggers. They still have a signature action, and they still have 3 and 5 cost heroic actions. They're just all triggers. But there was no obvious way to do that without pulling the game apart and putting it together. And we were not inclined to do that at the moment. It was one of those things where we thought, well, this might be possible, but let's wait until let's do that after release. Let's save it for the sequel, as we used to say in video games. Save it for the sequel. And we were still trying to figure out what Draw Steel was and how to get it done. And pulling it apart to put it back together again just to make this one idea work was not in the cards. But I just gave you folks a great idea that you could use however you want. What would a class look like? And the reason I thought that would be a good way to simulate the idea of a speedster is that they are so fast, they don't get a turn, maybe even. They're so fast, they're always acting on other people's turns. So you take here's a normal round of combat where people are taking turns, monsters and heroes, but there's one character who never gets a turn. Everything they do is a reaction. Is that possible? You tell me. You let me know. Somebody go try it out. Let me know, because we are not on deck to work on anything like that for a long time. We've got the Summoner and the Beast Heart still in development, almost done. One of them, at least, will come out soon. The same soon of the Codex. I'm picturing turkeys. I don't know why. But soon, we think the Summoner will come out. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, nothing's certain. The future's uncertain. And then the Beast Heart, probably early next year. Q1, maybe early Q2. And then after that, the next 2 classes on deck are the Operator and the Acolyte. And we have some cool ideas about the Acolyte. Shut up. Some of them came out of our Crack. One of them came out of our Crack the Sun meetings. And those who've been on the Patreon, you read the 10,000 word pitch for Crack the Sun. The reason we're going to crowdfunding in December is because we want to make an adventure that is so ambitious, we literally can't afford to do it ourselves. We literally cannot. All this other stuff we're doing: Fall of Blackbottom, the Summoner, the Beast Heart, 7 new Ancestries, 3 more adventures. All that stuff we're paying for ourselves, which gives you some indication of how well Draw Steel is doing. But it could always do better, but it's not doing well enough to fund Crack the Sun. That's what we need. That's what we need you folks for. And fingers crossed we'll get there. It's going to be a big ask. It's probably going to be the biggest ask we've ever done, but it's hundreds of pages of content and tchotchkes and handouts and stuff like that. It's going to be a big team working on it. And yeah, Crack the Sun discussions. turned into, we were like, wait a minute, what if the acolyte, and we were all like, shut up. So I'm really excited. We'll see. Yeah, exactly. Reese, Byzantine bureaucracy. Like, they're always taking their turn. They're always taking their turn. Well, you say that Bliximus Maximus. Little did I know, watching this channel for years, it would also improve my general social skills. I honestly think that improving social skills requires some sort of inspiration, or you need people. It's all about it's what the human brain does. It's all about modeling. You need to be able to model that behavior before you can engage in it. And so having people that you know or know. We don't know each other. Having people that you know or can sort of watch. And Steven Soderbergh said, one of the all-time great American directors, hugely underrated, said that he thought that the close-up was one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, which I'd never thought of. Stand by. Pardon me. Because the close-up, there's an analogy here. Stick with it. The close-up allows we monkeys that we are social creatures, and we just want to look at faces and interpret. And when we are at our best, it's because of the empathy we gain. There are linguists who think that the empathy comes first and then language happens. That what happens is the recognition that there's something happening in that monkey's head that is the same as what's happening in your monkey head. Right, and that once you're aware that there's a thinking, feeling person behind those eyeballs, just like there is behind your eyeballs, then you start developing language to communicate with that entity, right? But in a more primitive brain state, you don't have that awareness. And Soderbergh felt that the close-up allowed normal people to sit there and stare at another human being whose face is 80 feet high. And that person does not know you exist. That person cannot react to you. You are free to watch them and have whatever feelings or emotions or thoughts you want to have. And you're in a dark room with a bunch of strangers who can't see you and aren't looking at you. So you are free to have whatever reaction you want to have in a completely unjudgmental context. You could cry as a result. You could get angry. You could laugh. And no one's going to know or care because they don't know you and you're in the dark alone, basically. Once the lights go out, everybody's alone. And I sort of feel the same way about like all social interactions. Something like this can help because people go, I don't know Matt, but I can watch that dude and I can sort of model his behavior. And I think that's how growth happens. You need to have, I don't need to be part of this process, by the way. You need to have people around you in one sense or another that you can be like, I want to be more like that person. We were just talking about this on stream the other day. I want to be more like that person, model what they do. And then, I think people underrate the power of change. I think when in a world where authenticity is what works, which I believe and I value, in a world where authenticity is what works, I think it's easy to make the mistake that therefore you should think of that there's some state that you should be in, some primitive natural state that you should be in, and that deviation from that is inauthentic. No, what's inauthentic is the absence of growth and change. That's inauthentic. That's not human. Humans are, you're going to live, if you're lucky, many decades, and it would be very weird for you to be the same at the end of it as you were at the beginning. Anyway, I just talked for a long time about a bunch of shit that doesn't have anything to do with any of this nonsense. Intelligence dice, crack the sun is, I think, I don't know. I just work here, man. But I think it might be the most ambitious adventure anyone's ever tried to make. And I've just grossly oversold it. In many ways, it's very like other adventures that already exist. Other adventures that I've run and thought were really good and used as inspiration for Crack the Sun. But there's stuff in Crack the Sun that I've never seen anybody do before. And we'll find out together whether or not it's worth it. Excuse me. Why does Crack the Sun give me Dune vibes from the name? I don't know. Good question. But there's a lot of... Equinox is very Dune-like. Equinox is basically jungle Dune. And Equinox is a big part of Crack the Sun. Well, Guy Fawkes, you can go watch people playing the Summoner. You don't have to be skeptical of it. Skepticism implies ignorance of its nature. Go ahead and look. Go ahead and watch. You can watch people playing it. It gets better all the time. It was pretty good when I played it. When I played Willie's a brilliant designer. In fact, I don't really think of Draw Steel as being a good candidate for awards. I feel like Draw Steel already won all the awards that you need, in the sense of the people seem to like it and it generates a lot of revenue. What more do you want, right? Awards are for shining a spotlight. Awards are an opportunity for professionals in an industry to shine a spotlight on brilliant work that didn't get the box office dollars. And it doesn't matter if it could be anything. Every industry you've ever heard of has an award show. I'm sure there's a luggage award show, and Samsonite doesn't win. These other people you've never heard of win, right? Because the people in the industry are like, no, but that was a really brilliant suitcase this company made and nobody noticed. And so I felt like if we were ever going to submit anything for an award, it would be the Delian Tomb because of the work James did, and the Summoner because of the work Willie did. The Summoner the first time I played it, I'm like, this is great. And of course, in the playtest, what we're worried about is this too much? Is this too complicated for me to run? Am I stealing the spotlight from other players? But the other players in the playtest were like, no, I didn't get any sense that your turn took longer than anybody else's. Maybe it took a little bit longer because we all knew how to play our characters and you didn't. But it was also, this is another thing. I think by the way, maybe this is the corollary to the, why are people asking how to make combat go faster? What a weird question. What a weird question that there's millions of videos online about, and people have been talking about ever since I got into the hobby in the 1980s, how to speed up combat. What do you mean how to speed up combat? What do you mean how to speed up combat? Why not say how to speed up an entire session? Would the hobby, whatever game you're playing, be more fun if an entire session was over in 10 minutes and then you had to leave and go home? Nope. People would be like, but I would. Nope, 10 minutes. Faster is better, right? Faster is better. So what if we could take an entire RPG session and it's only 3 minutes and then you're done and you can't play anymore until next time? People would not like that, right? The issue isn't how do we speed up combat? The issue is how do we make combat fun? Because if it's fun, then you enjoy doing it and you're not trying to speed it up. You look forward to it. You know, a good movie cannot be too long, and a bad movie cannot be too short. And maybe the corollary there is how long it takes a player to take their turn is not necessarily the most important thing in the world. Maybe what's more important is what are they doing and is everybody having fun? And that was sort of the subtext of our internal playtest. The Summoner has been tested a lot since then, and I've not been part of that. But in our own early original internal playtests, one of the subtexts of the discussion afterwards was, I don't know if it was longer or not, but it was awesome. Me watching you take your turn, I'm like, this is fucking cool. And that's a whole other axis, right? Just like there's 90% of the discussion online is about how to speed combat up, but there's another axis, which is what if it was fun, right? Maybe the same thing holds true. I've literally never thought about this before. Maybe the same thing holds true in player character design, is it doesn't matter if your turn takes longer than other people's. It depends on what longer means. Is it 10% longer? Is it 500% longer? These things matter. But if it's 10% longer, but everybody at the table's like, that was fucking amazing. Well, I don't think longer is worse for a given value of longer. Blimey. Hey, Stephen Hoggerl. I'm trying to pronounce that name in a way that is less amusing. This live stream must be good luck. I just got the email that your books have shipped. Really proud of those books. I think people are really going to like it. Well, I think if combat is, it's interesting. I think generally combat is my least fun part of RPGs. Well, we get a lot of this. We get a lot of I don't like tactical RPGs. Well, there are two reasons for that. The obvious one is you don't like tactical RPGs. That's what we've typically assumed, that the audience for Draw Steel is people who like games like this. But it turns out, and we didn't know this until the game existed and people started talking about it, that there is a percentage of people out there, and I don't know how many there are. It might be few, but I get the impression that it's way less than 50%, but more than like 5 or 7%. Somewhere, that's a big gap, but somewhere in there are people who are like, I only thought that I didn't like tactical games because I had not played a good one. right? I had played junky ones. And so it may be that you really don't like combat, in which case there are lots of games, there are lots of RPGs out there for you. But it may be that you just haven't played a good one, or maybe good, bad. These are qualitative terms. Maybe the right one. You just haven't played the right one. I don't know that Draw Steel would be the right one for you. Maybe Lancer would be the right one for you. Stephen Hoggerl, I think that seems to be most people's reaction. AM Rosa 10 only in one RPG, and there are hundreds of RPGs out there. Yeah, maybe Phoenix Command is the right one. We have Phoenix Command. I got it on the shelf over there. Well, I feel like we've been streaming for an hour, and chat seems to be pretty chill. That's usually a sign that there's not many people here. Thank God. Corbo 909. Well, I'm that's not advice I can give you. I'm not one of those people. I would go check out Quinn's Quest. It would be a mistake to characterize Quinn's as being somebody who did not like tactical combat in their RPGs, but I think he has a really high bar of quality for it, and not many games live up to that. So I think he really liked Lancer, for instance, but I don't think he really credits D20 Fantasy. I agree, but I think that Quinn's tends to gravitate toward RPGs that are more work of art and have like or come from one or a partnership of authors who have a vision and who are trying to express philosophical ideas in the game, and those tend not to be that combat heavy. What's up, Max Brown? Welcome to the show. How do I explain, says Big Fella, how do I explain Malice? How do you explain that one goblin is now doing 10 times more damage than it was a second ago? That goblin's terrified and pissed off, and is the last one and desperate, and thereby capable of extraordinary feats. It's not hard. It's not hard to explain. I've never needed to explain it. Honestly, I have never. I've now run and played Draw Steel with a couple dozen people, and I've never had to. In fact, it's the opposite. Not only do I not have to explain Malice, I have seen in my own. This is one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me as a professional. Is I made a game. I'm not the only person that worked on that game. We made a game. And we're really proud of it. That's not the first time that's happened. And I'm running it for my actual friends. And that's a little unusual because, I guess that's not true. Like Hack, Red Alert, the Dune collectible card game, my friends and I played the shit out of those. But when it comes to video games, that's a little unusual. It's the people I work with that I would play that game with. And when I went home, I'd play other games. But this is a game that I worked on that we are playing recreationally outside of work. Amazing. Because it's fun. Unbelievable. And three of my players are like, I want to run something. I want to run something. My friend Phil, whom you might know because he was Slim in the Chain, and he also had his own game that he ran, Valengard, which I loved. I thought Valengard was awesome, and we would all go back to it in a heartbeat. He was looking at Draw Steel, and he's like, I don't want to go back to Valengard. Looking at this game, I don't want to run in Matt's world, but I don't want to run in Valengard. I want to make up a new place. I want to make up a new place where all this stuff is true. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And Brock is now run. Matt O'Driscoll's run. Phil is getting ready to run. And the number one reason is they want to spend Malice. They see me going, and they see all this crazy stuff happen. They're like, what was that? They want to spend Malice, and that's not why we made Malice. We did not create Malice to convert players into directors and be like, wouldn't you like to have all these cool? Yeah, I would. But I thought about it, and I was like, my God, this could be a major breakthrough to a certain extent. Because when I was coming up in the hobby, at least for me personally, and I know I'm not unique in this, but I think there are lots of reasons, but one of the major motivations for me to get behind the screen is the game in the 80s was still very much about secret doors and hidden treasures. And mysteries, very much about mysteries and puzzles and stuff like that, and playing by your wits, right? Which, Draw Steel's not really about. I think Crows is going to be a lot more about that, fingers crossed. It already is a lot more about that. I've played Crows now a couple times. And I wanted all the secrets. I wanted to see the non-repro blue map and see where all the secret doors were, because we would sit there for hours being like, I know there's a fucking room here in this dungeon because we've mapped the whole thing out and there's a void, right? It's like exploring a pyramid. There's a void here in the middle of this thing and there must be a way in here, but we can't find it, right? And so there was a lot of motivation to be like, I want to see the secrets. I want to be the secret keeper. I think there must be an RPG where you're the secret keeper, not a game master. Well, that motivation's been gone for a long time, folks. That motivation, and now I think people are motivated to get behind the screen. I think mostly for like social egalitarian reasons, because they want status, or they want to lead that kind of creative life. And those motivations they can be powerful, but they're also pretty thin on the ground. There aren't that many people, I think, that are attracted to that, and that's why I felt like there's a dearth of directors. There's not that many DMs, lots of players, not that many people want to DM, because I don't think the Seattle game incentivizes people to get behind the screen. And it was a huge pillar of our development that we wanted running Draw Steel, and not just running it, but building encounters, designing adventures, building encounters, running it at the table to be fun to play, the way games are fun to play. What about that? Wouldn't that be crazy? And so far, it seems like most of the people reporting back report that not only is that true, but when they say I ran Draw Steel for the first time, it's not uncommon. You can go in our Discord and see this, and tell me if I'm wrong. For people to say, I ran it and 2 of my players want to run. What's Crows? Crows is the second RPG that we are working on. Draw Steel is the flagship RPG. It gets all the juice and attention, right? But we don't want to be a single game company. I hate that idea. I would consider that failure. We don't want to be a single game company. I am working on a new board game, and James is working on a new RPG called Crows, and we're probably going to hire somebody. I don't know when. Probably not until after the crowdfunder, because we need to know whether or not there's going to be any money there. So assuming the crowdfunder funds, but even then, it might not fund at a level that makes us that confident. We'll see. We'll all find out together. We're probably going to hire somebody to take over being the line developer for Draw Steel, and we'll all still be working on a lot of these. James is still working on a lot of Draw Steel stuff. I will always be working on Draw Steel stuff, but we need somebody else to make sure products get done. And Crows is an idea that James and I both fell in love with. Around the time that we were, I think even before we started working on Draw Steel, we knew Draw Steel was going to exist, but we were looking forward. So this would have been 2022. And we were like, I still love the idea of a dungeon crawler, like a straight up classic. Death is common. You're not a hero. You're a normal person. You're sort of a normal person. And it's inventory. Managing inventory is a big deal. How many torches you have. There was a video that I saw a comment in the OSR community when I posted some video, and I don't remember which video it was, but I was talking about, it might have been the different styles of play or something. No, it wasn't that. It was way more recent than that. I was talking about maybe it was arguing about D&D in the 70s. One of these videos, I talked about this old school style of play where you have to track arrows. And I said, does that sound tedious? If it does, then you don't get it. You've missed the point. Tracking arrows, you're not thinking about how tedious it is to track arrows. You're terrified that you're going to run out of arrows. Right? And somebody in the OSR community was like, that is the best pitch for the OSR. That right there is that you want to play the game where you have limited resources, and as they dwindle, you are getting more and more terrified, right? Well, you know what? You have limited resources in D20 Fantasy in 5th edition, but as they dwindle, things are just getting more tedious. And you've been like, can't we just rest right now? Can't we just rest? Can we just take a long rest here in the middle of the dungeon? Who gives a shit? Right? Because the game is right. So Crows is that inventory management. It's sort of played in real time. I think there might actually be timers that you use, and I'm not working on Crows. I just approve of it. I want it to exist. I want to play it. I want to run it. And I've had lots of discussions with James about, James, because he's the lead. He's not the lead. He's the director. He's the director of Crows. And I'm like, do you know who your audience is? What are we trying to do here with Crows? Are we trying to capture D20 Fantasy fans who wish the game was more like this and it's not? Or are we trying to colonize the OSR and make a game that OSR people are going to like? Because those are two different audiences. If the only game you've ever played is 5th edition, and keep in mind that's probably like a million-ish RPG players, if the only game you've ever played is 5th edition, then you have no idea that there's this other way to play that's sort of implied by 5th edition, but not really supported by it, right? And just like Draw Steel delivers on the heroic fantasy promises of 5th edition that it does not do any work to deliver on, Crows is designed to deliver on the dungeon crawling horror, the existential horror of going in. And I played a dude who, you know what my gear was? You know what I had? My first Draw Steel character? I had a goat and a crossbow. And that was my dude. That was it. The goat, you stay here. You stay here. Milk comes out of you. We might need you to survive, right? And a crossbow. And I was one of the most effective people in the party because I didn't go down into the dungeon. I stayed up and this little like air was escaping through the top of this thing that we were at. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and plink these people. And there was a rival party. And I don't know. It's up to James. But rival parties might be a big part of Crows because it's Crows imagining that they're the desperate people who, for whatever reason, have put down the plow, probably because crops are failing, whatever. What kind of person would do this? What kind of person would give up their life in medieval fantasy land as a peasant and risk life and limb? And the analogy I drew was, it's like cities. It's like cities. It's not until the early 20th century that cities grew in population as a result of the birth rate. So 5,000 years we've had cities, and for 99.999% of them, the only reason cities grew was because more people were moving into them than dying from the plagues they brought. That's the only reason cities grew, is because more people were moving to them than were dying in the city from the constant disease and plagues. And that tells you something about how hard life was outside the city. How brutal and grueling being a purveyor of agrochemicals is. You know, what's that quote from the Magnificent Seven? The farmers are always afraid. They're afraid it'll rain too much and the crops will get flooded. They're afraid it'll rain too little and the crops will all die. They're afraid the pig is going to have too many babies it can't feed. It's not going to have enough. It's not going to have enough babies, and now you can't get fed, right? And what kind of person is going to give up a life that many generations of their family have been doing and go into the city, which is a disease-infested place where people are dying all the time? Somebody who's desperate. Same thing. Dungeons, same thing. And so, yeah, the idea of rival parties being a big part, I don't know, it's up to James, but that was the thing we talked about. And I also said that I thought that there's going to need to be a reason there are dungeons. There's going to need to be a reason there are dungeons. And I think James has some really cool ideas in that department. And also, I think a big part of Crows is going to be the town and town management. Right, and that the town is sort of like this shared character that all the players are contributing to, and it's going to grow and build over time as you. And I don't know that James doesn't think that you level up in Crows. You just get more points to spend on skills and stuff like that as your character gets more experienced. But the town might level up. The town might grow over time in the features and things it can do. And you're going to retire. Your character is going to retire at a certain level and become like a class trainer in the town. And I was like, great. Love all this stuff. We've had lots of discussions about Crows, and James, it's really close to his heart. And it might, I don't know. It depends on how things go. It depends on how much of it James writes, and it depends on what James wants. But it might literally say Crows by James Introcaso. Draw Steel does not say by Matt Colville, even though these are most of the things in Draw Steel were my idea, and a lot of them are my design. But because like a lot of people worked on that, I really didn't like the idea of presenting Draw Steel as Matt Colville's RPG, because I knew I wanted it to be collaborative, and it was. Like the power roll came from James. I don't think I would have got there. And in fact, I know I wouldn't have gotten there because I got to the same conclusion James got to. We need a chart, but I am old. And as soon as I thought, well, the only thing that'll do this is a chart. The only thing I could see was Rollmaster. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I loved Rollmaster, but I don't know if people are going to go for it in this day and age, right? And that, for me, that would have been the end. That would have been the end. I would have been like, okay, well, that's not going to work. And I would have looked somewhere else. But James didn't think that. So it was intensely, I mean, you know, if it wasn't for Willie and Jordy, a lot of Draw Steel would not be the way it is. Willie and Jordy's fingerprints are all over this game. So it's a collaborative thing, but I think Crows is going to be a James Introcaso joint that we just publish. So I really liked the very, very first alpha release of Darkest Dungeon. I haven't played it since. I should go back to it because I really liked it, but I felt like it was what it was. I felt like it needed some polish, and I bet I would really like the. Would I like to design a miniature skirmish game in the near future? Well, yes. What's up, Dr. Paxmore? I remember that name. Well, I don't know how much innovation. I often feel like. I feel like there's not much innovation in the TTRPG space. What there is people rediscovering ideas people had in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, because every generation comes to it sort of new. That's one of the lessons of the elusive shift is there is not, and I don't think there ever will be, but that's just my opinion. There is no institutional knowledge in role-playing games because no one knows what an RPG is. That's one of the subtexts of the elusive shift. I don't think he ever comes out and says that, but he gets really close to it. No one knows what an RPG is, but we'll know it when we see it. There are no two tables that play the same way. Just having a table of people playing 5th edition and there's 7 players and another table and there's 2 players, those are 2 different games. The things you need to do as a director to make a 7-player table work versus a 2-player table, they don't overlap. If you've got a bunch of Jim Murphys in your group, then you are going to run a very fucking tactical game. If you've got a bunch of Liam O'Briens, then you're going to run a very narrative game, right? No one agrees on what this shit is, and there's no generational knowledge. But the good news is new people are discovering the hobby all the time, and they get really excited by the possibility, and they reinvent all these ideas, and they always do it with their own spin and their own flavor. And that's why we saw a lot of people who are like why are you ripping off this one game? And you're not even talking about the fact, why are you hiding the fact that Draw Steel is a ripoff of this one game, which was a crazy thing to say. But I would always be like, what are you talking about? Like, we're ripping off this game you never heard of. We're ripping off a game from 30 years ago, man. Where you been? So I think that stuff happens all the time. Is there anybody we work with a lot of people now. I mean, we've got a farm team of people that we work with, and there's like a pyramid of people that march up, and there are people on the short list. There are people I've worked with that I would love to work with again, but there are definitely designers in the space that I would love to work with again, but they're all kind of doing their own thing. We have a really annoying track record. We have a really annoying track record of working with some really brilliant designers. And I'm like, she's on the short list. She's next time we're hiring, there's the short list typically has 3 people on it to give you an idea of how long the short list is. She's on it. So let's everybody keep an eye on her. She's great. And then 3 weeks later, she's gone. She's now a full-time employee at this one place. But we are very, very cautious when it comes to hiring because we don't want to have to fire anybody. We don't want to have to fire anybody. And we know what that's like and what the consequences of it are. And so we've structured this company in such a way that we only hire very rarely. But as a result, we've never had to fire anybody for we never had layoffs. We've never had layoffs where we're running out of money. But yeah, I think as far as a tactical skirmish like a war game, let's get Derelict done first. If we can get Derelict done and it does well and people like it, then that's gonna open up a lot of opportunities for us as a company, because a dungeon crawler board games audience does not really overlap with an RPG. People don't know this because typically if you're somebody like me and if you're in these chats, then you're probably pretty closely aligned. You probably play lots of games. You don't only play role-playing games. Right? But that makes you very unusual, and most people don't know that because the community of people talking about these games online tend to be power users, and they don't realize that. They think they're normal. Nope, you're not normal. Most people who are in the hobby don't spend any time on Reddit or in Discords. They've got a WhatsApp group. They've got a Facebook group they're in. They've got their own local friends, coworkers, colleagues, whatever, that they play with, hang out with, and that's their community. And I forgot where I was going with this. Brain. What is brain? What was I talking about, chat? Oh, Derelict, right. So Derelict, dungeon crawler board game, sci-fi dungeon crawler board game, doesn't look anything like any MCDM product we've ever made, right? So there's not that many people in the MCDM audience who are going to be interested in that because they're role players and they're crows, but not but not a completely different genre of tabletop game. And so we have to present to the people who are into board games and say, we are also into board games and we've made something we think you'll like. And that's very risky. Not a lot of companies succeed at going from one genre of game to another. And no one would be surprised if we fail. People fail all the time, even people who worked really hard and are smart. But we're going to give it our best shot. I've got some interesting ideas for Derelict's design. I sort of don't believe in them. I'm like, this can't work. This crazy thing, this can't work. It's going to take too goddamn long to kill one monster. But what I understand is, and this is my reluctance right now, but I've got other fish in the fire. Do fish go, fish? Art thou constant to the old covenant? I've got other irons in the fire and other fish to fry, bigger fish to fry. But I definitely have a design for crows. I've been noodling on it last week. Got to get a prototype built so that Jason and I can play it. Because what I know is this crazy design I have isn't going to work. But I don't know what will work until I play it. And so that's one of those. I don't want to. I want to believe. I want to think this is brilliant and genius and everyone's going to love it. But right now, I just think it's neat. And I'm like, it's going to take too goddamn long to kill a monster if this is how much. Things got to move. No one would ever play Zombicide if it worked like this. But I don't know what the right design is until we try the prototype. Thomas O'Hara, A+. Is Derelict inspired by Space Hulk? Yeah, actually, I think it is. Yeah, I mean, it's inspired by a lot of games, but Space Hulk 3rd edition, which I own, and I only played a couple of times. I only played Space Hulk. By the way, if you're not a game designer, I think you might not be aware that a game designer can play a game once and walk away with their brain fizzing. They don't need to get married to that game. I played Space Hulk a couple times, and there was a lot I liked about it. I don't think it's like the thing I loved about Space Hulk was the way it was a deliberate simulation of the movie Aliens, down to the fact that there were these radar tokens. The handheld beep 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 thing that they're carrying that indicates where movement is. Brilliant cinematic device. I'm not sure we'd ever seen anything exactly like that before. I think maybe in Westworld or something like that. But yeah, what a good cinematic. One of those things that probably James Cameron came up with that instantly now was like flying cars in Blade Runner. As soon as you do that, now, there were flying cars in the Jetsons, but after Blade Runner, all flying cars look like Blade Runner flying cars. Like as soon as they've got that beep, 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 now everyone's like, oh, that's just how you would do it, right? And you would have these tokens that had on one side of the token, it had the radar symbol, and on the other side, it told you how many Xenos to put out. Sometimes the answer was none. You got false positives. Right? And sometimes it would be like a star or something, meaning like there's an elite Xeno. And so you would put these tokens out, you'd pull them from a bag and you'd put them out and you wouldn't know until you explored and flip them over, and I thought that was really cool. I don't think Derelict is going to have that. I don't think Derelict needs that. But yeah, it is inspired by Space Hulk. It's inspired by a lot of games. I mean, it's inspired by Warhammer Quest. It's inspired by, it's actually really heavily inspired by Gloomhaven because we all hate Gloomhaven. We all hate, not me, Jason and I and Lars, I would say, we hate Gloomhaven. We're like, this is a terrible game. Why do people love this thing so much? And I was really worried. I have not played Nemesis, but I own it. It's on the other side of that wall. It just showed up a couple weeks ago. Looking at Nemesis, I think it's the fact that it's collaborative competitive. Derelict is very much only collaborative. Steve Helgel, because I think that the deck builder part of Gloomhaven is just a gimmick, and I don't think that game or that genre is well served by trying to kludge an entirely different kind of game into there. And that top bottom thing just never works. It just never worked for me. It never worked for me, and I don't like it. And the funny thing is, we played it. The analog version, we played the digital version, and I played the digital version a lot, but eventually like Matt O'Driscoll took my spot in the group because I just got fed up with top bottom. I'm like, I just fucking hate this. I hate constantly forgetting. And the thing is, they played for weeks. They played like 19 sessions or more, way more. And I would ask Tom and Lindsay and Matt, I'm like, have you guys ever gotten used to the top bottom thing? And they're like, oh no, we always fuck it up. Every player fucks it up at least once per game. And I'm like, get rid of it. Get rid of that shit. Ugh. Yeah. And I was worried. Jason and I both had kind of a come to Jesus moment where we were like, maybe we just shouldn't make Derelict. Like if the consensus is Gloomhaven's the best dungeon crawler ever made, then maybe we shouldn't be making a thing that is the opposite. That would be the worst dungeon crawler ever made. Why would we make that? And we really felt that. We really felt like, maybe we should be working on something else, because I don't think, if that's what the people want and we don't like it, then maybe but I was like, well, let me, and I started to dig. I started to do research, and anybody who's interested in making a product should be interested, not just willing, but interested in doing research and going online and seeing, okay, why do people like Gloomhaven? And I read hundreds of threads over the course of weeks on various forums, and you would be surprised at how many people ask the question, why do you guys like this game? So that was really useful. The fact that there were a lot of people like me, that told me something out there saying, why do you guys like this game? So I had hundreds of answers. And a lot of people, when you ask them, why do you like this thing? They don't know why. They don't know why they like it. They had a gut reaction. It's an emotional reaction. Their conscious thinking brain was not turned on. But when you ask them why, now they're going to come up with a reason. And that's just sophistry. They're just going to invent a reason after the fact. But I, as a creative professional who's worked in a collaborative environment and had to put my work in front of my colleagues and get and listen and watch. I don't really solicit feedback. I didn't really need to solicit feedback. I remember coming up with the names of the monsters in Evolve. That was my job, to figure out, Matt, you're in charge of the lore, so you're in charge of what the monsters are called. And so like once a week, it's just a text file. I would just push out a new text file, and it was usually Oakley. It was usually Oakley who would sit there, and when the monster's name would come up on the screen, like if it was like one of them might have been like Reaver. I'm just going to pull a random name out of my ass. And he would go, Reaver, right? And he would say it in a comedically, because he hated the name. Because he hated them. I'm like, okay, I didn't ask him what he thought. I did not ask him what he thought. What's the point of that? He's an artist. He's not a writer. He doesn't know what makes a good name or a bad name. He just knows what he likes. And I could tell what he likes by his reaction. And he was just one example. There's dozens of people in and around me, and I would push names out. And then eventually, and so I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, they didn't like that. And I would think, why? What's wrong? Because it's this, because it's that. It's generic, it's silly, it's edgelordy. And I was like, okay, so what's the opposite of that? What if it's something more like, what if they're more like biblical reference? And I pushed out a new, and this is like, iteration. I pushed out a new list. And so all of a sudden they're in a game, and the monster's name comes up, and I hear Oakley go, Goliath. And he was serious. He thought it was cool. And I went, we're on our way, right? So when you ask people, you don't necessarily want to ask people what they think, because that engages a gear their brain is not normally in, and you'll get an answer, but it's not necessarily going to be a useful answer. So there were a lot of people talking about all this stuff, and I'm looking at their answers and I'm like, I think that's epiphenomenal. I don't think that answer that's an after the fact answer. But then I started to notice this undercurrent in all these different threads about Gloomhaven. This one thing these are all different users and different, this game's been out for a while, years apart these threads are, but there was this thing that kept coming up in all these threads that seemed real to me. How can I explain why it seemed real? I think the only reason is I'm a creative professional, and I recognize the right answer when I see it, even though I don't necessarily know it until I see it. And it was, I love Gloomhaven because every fight in Gloomhaven feels like it could go either way right up to the last minute, and I have no idea how they did that. And I went, we can do that. We just coming off of Draw Steel, I guarantee you we can do that. That we can do. So if that's what you like, and it's not, and the whole deck builder thing is if I'm right about that, and the whole deck builder thing is not actually the reason people love Gloomhaven. It's that feeling that every fight, also the persistence of your character, and the fact that I already knew. I already knew we wanted to do that, and I think we can do way better than Gloomhaven, by the way, knock on wood. But that, I was like, that's the thing they really love about Gloomhaven. They love the fact that every fight feels like a nail biter right up till the very end. And I'm like, I don't know exactly how close we can get to that, but I think it's a matter of degree, not of kind. That we can get close enough, and if Gloomhaven does it better than us, that's fine. We will be able to do it well enough for our purposes. Yeah, Chris Schneider, I think we can do the same there. Excuse me. Highway 777. Nope. Oh, awesome, Johnny Brandt. Thank you. I will share your congratulations with the team. Thank you very much for Draw Steel. Been playing with your group for 3 months. Very enthusiastic. Joy, life, oxygen. That makes me so happy. I mean, there are people, because they were in the Patreon, there are people who have already completed their first year of playing Draw Steel every week, and they're still on the hook, and that makes me so happy. Oh, look at that. Tuon and Lintu. Then you might be the only person who likes it, but we were going to make a game for you. VT, you're a treasure, VT. I just look at this low-key TTRPG. I just banned my first commenter on my YouTube channel. Quite validating. Yeah, don't be afraid to ban people. I mean, the thing is, I didn't talk about this because once you start giving advice, then it never stops, right? That's the Duke Leto. Once you start giving orders on something, it never stops. But like, you know, maybe means no. Like if you're looking at a comment and you're like, what the fuck, dude, right? Get rid of that person. Get rid of that person. You'll know when people disagree with me all the time. And you might not see those comments because the most positive comments tend to go to the top. But I see them. And I'm like, yep, that's fine. Yeah, that person disagrees, but they're not being a dick about it. And the thing is, the people who are dicks about disagreeing, they cannot separate in their minds. They cannot separate being a dick, which is the only way they know how to be online, with the fact that they disagree. They conflate these two things and think that the reason they're getting ejected is because they disagree. Almost every time, in fact, maybe literally every time, I've seen someone go online and complain about getting banned from our Discord, which happens all the time. I've never seen someone actually say why they were banned. They make up a reason. I was banned because I didn't do this, that, and the other thing. I was banned. I'm like, I'm in all of the mod channels, bro. That's not why you were banned. You were banned because you're a cockbag, and you were called out on being a cockbag, and you didn't change. Because we call people out on being a cockbag all the time, and they're like, I was just having a bad day, I apologize. And our mods tend to be like that, right? They tend to be like, one of the big lessons from League of Legends is that when you see people who are behaving badly, if you give them a chance, if you say, you may have just been having a bad day, but if you keep this up, you're gonna get banned. The number of people who are like, you're right, I got heated and over I was unable to regulate my behavior and it was stupid, and I realize that now, don't worry, it's not gonna happen again. That works. That actually works. It's a very productive way, and people stay in the community. But the people who cannot regulate their behavior, they get kicked out. And then they go online and they say, I was kicked out because it's the wokeism. And I'm like, that wasn't why, bro. That wasn't why. You're just a dick. Anyway. Excuse me. I mean, I think a lot of combat is puzzles, Duroc. I think a lot of combat design, encounter design in a game like Draw Steel, which is an RPG, it is like a puzzle. Anyway. I mean, we ban people. The mods are volunteers, and so they have a very low tolerance for this stuff because they're not getting paid for this, and they sometimes jump the gun, and they will sometimes ban people out of an abundance of caution, because it's not that person's feelings they're worried about, it's the community's feelings they're worried about, and this person's being disruptive. But sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes it's me who's I'm watching I'm like, oh, I don't think we needed to. I think that person was just misled or something like that. And there are lots of times people are like, hey, I didn't mean that, blah blah blah, I'm sorry, and they get unbanned. Happens all the time. But the fact that it happens all the time, something that happens way more than that is people getting banned and nope, you're not sorry, nope. Anyway, well, I feel as though this stream has gone about as well as it could go. Obviously we could hang out here all day, but 90 minutes is a goodly amount of time. Will our board games have a single player mode? Almost certainly not. 2 players? I don't know. That's possible. In fact, I tend to think, I definitely think that we have like a 2-player game in our future, like a card game or something like that. I definitely think I'm an omni gamer, and I'm a professional game designer. I got lots of ideas for games. I've worked on lots of games. I definitely think that some like a 2-player style game would be in our future, but in general, we are trying to make games for people that are larger groups. Like I want most dungeon crawlers are 4 players. Some of them are 4 players and a DM. This never works. The DM thing does not work because it's not. They try to fake that it's competitive, but it's not actually. You've just made a bad RPG, and you've made this person, the act of being the dungeon master, even more annoying because this person doesn't get to be creative. They're just running an algorithm. So I think the best ones are the algorithm runs the game and it's 4 players playing cooperatively. But we think 5. Let's go to 5 players. Let's make a 5-player cooperative dungeon crawler and see what happens, and see if there's an audience for that. Now, you would think that if it was a single-player dungeon crawler, that audience for that would be even larger. I'm not sure that that's true. I'm not sure that that's true, but we're all going to find out together. Near Nihil. Thank you for your expression of gratitude. We appreciate you. Oh yeah, the Warfare game, Untouchable Glory. That thing was going in a really good direction, and we put it down. We might pick it back up, but I don't know. I think it would evolve a little bit. So I love Shadows over Camelot. That was like the first cooperative game that I played, apart from sort of Republic of Rome, which is not strictly speaking cooperative. I think it's more like Republic of Rome, which is the most complicated game I've ever played. You want to win. You want to win individually, but you all need to work together to stop Rome from falling. But even though Shadows over Camelot is very similar in terms of everyone needs to stop the game from winning, but you want to win uniquely. Actually, you don't want to win uniquely in Shadows. It's a perfectly collaborative game. So apart from Republic of Rome, which is only abstractly the same, I love Shadows over Camelot. Yeah, I got to run too. Thanks for being here. Is MCDM a publisher? Will we work with independents? Probably not, because we have our own ideas. We have our own games that we want to make, and it's not. And I think it could be. We have a limited number of resources, and we want to put them into the things that we believe in, which is probably the same thing you should be doing: is take your limited resources and put them into the thing that you believe in. So it's not impossible that we would publish somebody else's thing, but it seems not in this era of MCDM. So thanks for hanging out, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for asking great questions and generally being a great community. Until next time, be seeing you.